I'm Ariane. This is Book Zealots, and I'm going to do a quick review for How Your Child is Smart by Dawna Markova, Ph.D. This book basically talks about her experience substituting for a class of problem children that nobody would teach. And the reason she took the job was because she had been given a life sentence, basically. I think she had cancer and she needed to make money quick, and so she took this substitution job. She went into this classroom and it was a hot mess. These kids were all over the place. There was more than one boom box, more than one song playing at the time, and the kids were just all over the place. She came in, turned off the lights, sat down on the ground. And that's pretty much the beginning of the story. What is interesting is that she learned how these children learn. And for their test scores, they improved. And then interestingly enough, the higher-ups had issue with that. Now, why is that? Why would anyone have a problem with students doing better? That doesn't make any sense. So I did a quick investigation online. Take that for what it's worth, because the information is very hard to find. I do know that schools are given a certain amount of a certain dollar amount per student, and of course when that student is not there, then they don't get money. That's an issue, which is why the schools harass parents and need to have that doctor's excuse. You can't go on vacation during school time. What are you thinking? But I digress. And how much more money they get for children that have learning disabilities. Good luck finding the quality, good luck finding the amount of money that they make, because it's different in each state, it's different each year, and the monetary amount is very challenging to find. Okay, so what this woman found out is that each child has a different way of learning, and if they have a different way of learning, then obviously certain testings aren't fit for their skill set. And therefore, it looks like they're stupid, but they are not. I have a few pages in this book that I want to read to you, so I hope that doesn't bother you. And then I'm going to the specific ways that each child can learn or does learn, and I recommend this book. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there. I cannot tell you in depth everything that can be gleaned from this book. If you're a teacher, you need to have this book. If you're a parent, you should have this book. If you homeschool your children, I highly recommend this book. Now, something that I had read in I think it was Dr. Dobson, when you have little boys and they don't listen to you, or you call their name numerous times and they act like they don't hear you, you need to touch them first to get their attention. That is a kinesthetic, auditory, visual child, I believe, if I remember correctly, which I thought was very fascinating. Because I had to do that with one of my children. Anyway, so I'm going to start reading some of the highlights. What I will do also is, on our channel page for Book Zealots is a link to our blog. I will write, give me a week, but I will write an in-depth review, typing in more information, because I can put more information on the blog without making this overly long. Okay, so on page 5, she writes, parents and teachers need to shift from being the learning experts, she put quote unquote, to becoming facilitators of learning. We all need to be focused on learning how our children learn rather than concentrating on controlling their minds to acquire information that will be outdated before it can even be integrated or changed, because we know those history books are constantly being changed. And that means beginning to recognize, honor, and respect the different ways children learn. We need to let our children blossom, not beat them down. Now, I know that some of this might seem as though it's harping on teachers. It really isn't, because she was a teacher. Like I said in the beginning, I started out, she went to get a tutoring job. I also want to emphasize that I know teachers no longer have the ability to teach what they want to teach. At least this is true for California. Teachers are told what to teach, which is mostly teaching to the test. They teach what is going to be on the test in order for them to score highly, in order for the school to get money. Now, I don't know if that's the case for everywhere, but I'm sure it's common. Okay. Another thing, on page 12, she was told by the psychologist that these kids' maximum attention span was 10 minutes. What does that say today? How many students, how many children today was your child diagnosed as being ADHD or ADD? My older son it was suspected that he had ADHD. And the teacher wanted me to go to this after-school parent thing where a doctor was there and he was talking about children that had ADHD. So I stayed, I listened to the whole thing. Afterwards, I talked to the doctor. The doctor asked me some questions and he said, no, I don't think your child has ADHD. Are you concerned? And I said, no, I don't think my child has ADHD either. He asked me why I was there, and I said, the teacher told me to come, and he said, it sounds like a teacher problem. Thank you, doctor, I agree. Anyway, thankfully, my son was not labeled, because that definitely hinders the children. On page 21, I got this book used, so this highlight isn't mine, but the previous owner highlighted something which is interesting. Many years in education have taught me that children are naturally learning abled, and we de-skill them in school. In a very real sense, they are brighter when they begin than when they leave. Brighter as in more alert, more willing to experiment. They're more willing to be wrong and to laugh at their mistakes. They're more willing to risk and to reach. Before they enter school, kids walk as if they belong on the earth, as if they are their own people, as if they trust their own minds. There is no gap between their true nature and their ability to express it. Yeah, I've seen that. On page 30, she writes, warning! Labels are dangerous to a child's self-esteem and educational health. They emphasize what students cannot do. I believe we are so attached to them because school systems are given huge amounts of money for children who wear those labels. And I touched on that earlier, and that is true. So for any homeschooling parents, don't label your child, even if they do have a learning disability. Just work around it. As the child gets older, you can explain to them why they might struggle in certain ways. But I wouldn't say that I wouldn't call it a disability. And I certainly wouldn't call it a learning disability. I would say that they learn differently. Here's how you learn, and here's what we need to make things a little bit easier for you. So testing and things like that is one of the beauties of homeschooling, is that everything is flexible. And that way the child learns what works best for them. Now, obviously, if they decide to go on to college, they're going to have to figure out a way around that. Yeah. But I'm thinking if your child has a certain predilection, is that the right word, for the way they learn, that I think their interest might be part of the way that they learn. And so there might not be an issue at all. On page 45, we start getting into the 6 personal thinking patterns. So not just for children, for adults too, because we take it with us our whole lives. So one of the ways that she breaks it down, we have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And then she breaks it down to thinking patterns, ways of moving thought, of metabolizing, digesting, and processing experience. So because there are 3, you can order them in different ways. In each section, she has information about how they think, what works for them, and there's like a quick quiz of questions. I don't know if I highlighted that part, but it's on page 6. Okay, so from 57 to page 61, there are 15 questions. Super easy to answer. Maybe you should do yourself first. Think back when you were young and what you enjoyed and things that you did, and then mark yourself first, and then do your children, and then continue through the book to see if that chapter fits yourself and your child. So that's what I did. I did myself first, and looked back and thought about what I was learning as a child, how I was learning, what I prefer now, and then I did my son. And it's spot on. This book is so amazing, which is why I gave it 5 stars. Okay, so another one on page 52. What do you already know? You as a parent know more about your children than anyone else does, right? You know your child better, I hope so. And then I've heard a lot of parents say, oh, I could never homeschool. But then when they actually homeschool, the relationship with your child actually improves. It doesn't decrease, it increases. Okay. Now, starting on chapter 6, we get into auditory, visual, kinesthetic. The easiest way for them to learn is to hear, to see, and then to experience. So that's basically what auditory, visual, kinesthetic means. The easiest way for them to express: they say, they show, and they do. The movers and the groovers, the kinesthetic, auditory, visual, they need to do, say, and show. Now, when I do my written review in this, I'll try and put little highlights of each learner, each of the 6. The Wandering Wonders, Chapter 8. The Kinesthetic Visual Auditory. They do, they show, they say. The Seer and Feelers, the VKA. This is Visual Kinesthetic Auditory. They show, they do, and they say. The Show and Tellers, the Visual Auditory Kinesthetic. They show, they say, and they do. And I was just thinking, if I'm a manager or if I'm a boss of a company, I'm going to want to know how my employees learn and what they need to do to make their job, to make them more successful at their job, because by doing that, your business is going to be more successful. And on page 180 through 181, she has a teaching primer, suggestions for teaching different subjects, because in California, one teacher probably has about 35 students. And if you have them, a group learning KAV and a group over here doing VKA, or a group over here that is auditory, visual, your mind is going to be exploding right now. I completely understand. How are you going to be able to teach a subject to all of those children for them to understand, comprehend, and then be able to test on it? I get it. It's going to be something that needs to be worked through. I honestly was thinking, why don't you have teachers that are kinesthetic, auditory, visual, teach all the kinesthetic, auditory, visual students? But I don't ever see that happening. It would be ideal, but I don't see it happening. Anyway, so she has ideas for reading, she has ideas for writing, mathematics, history and social studies, foreign languages, music, reading. Who are we kidding? California doesn't have music anymore. They don't even have PE anymore. Not when I left. Visual arts, physical education, yeah. And so she, that is at the very end of the book. She does have suggestions for teachers and how to teach the children. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know I went really quickly. I will try and get the written review up as soon as possible, but please do give me a week to get it finalized and posted. Thank you very much for visiting. I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye.